Welcome, tena koutou, tena koutou, tena koutou katoa, and welcome to Faster Isn't Better, Better is Better. So today's Q&A, a quick intro. I'm Una, the AI Innovation Lead here at Right Group, and I'm happy and excited to be joined today by Grant Verhoeven from Sparked. Hi, Grant. In the next half hour, we're going to be talking about how businesses that win in the AI era won't necessarily be the fastest. They'll be the businesses who combine efficiency with quality, authenticity, and human judgment. So, quick little intro for those of you who haven't worked with Right before or don't know who Right Group is. Who are we? What are we? We are a plain language consultancy and certified B Corp. B meaning benefit. We're based in New Zealand and work with organizations all over the world to help them achieve their strategic goals through clear and efficient communication. And we've been doing this since 1989. So Grant, could you tell us a little bit about your company, Sparked?
Kia ora, Una, and kia ora everybody. Well, Sparked is a leadership development and coaching practice, and we're based here in Wellington. And what we do is help leaders and teams develop their thinking and be deliberate around how they use AI. Ultimately, it's about making sure that we all stay relevant and up to speed with the changing landscape. And what I'm noticing is there's a lot of people at the moment hearing about AI, some people even feeling like they're under pressure to adopt it. There's some confusion. And I suppose my work fits at this intersection around mindset, the tools of AI, and the key skills of things like leadership development.
So it sounds like you're very relevant in today's world, Grant. Or you're definitely starting in the right way. And it's funny when you talk about speed because everything that we're talking about today has that theme. So we're going to be talking about speed at speed in just 30 minutes. So let's firstly talk about speed and clarity. So most conversations, and just as Grant mentioned there, focus on speed. Lots of managers, lots of companies, they're always wanting to make the boat go faster. Much less attention is given to how quality and clarity is protected while we're driving for that speed and productivity. So adopting AI before clarifying what you want from it can affect alignment and quality output, and that's something we see it right with our own business and also with our clients. So with that in mind, Grant, how has the quest and that striving for quality shown up in your own business and perhaps client work?
It's a great question, and the quote I really love is if you're going to go and chop down a tree, spend the first 5 to 10 minutes sharpening your saw. And you mentioned about taking those moments or that thinking before getting into something, to how valuable that is before whether you start writing or using AI or even starting a business, how important it is to have that thinking before we start. So in terms of my business, it really shows up in terms of being quite clear about how I help clients, and particularly what I'm noticing is helping clients with their own clarity of thinking before they even start to engage with AI. My background was in career development, and often the work that I was doing was before people started job hunting in the space where they were working out what they wanted to do, and taking those moments beforehand to think about skills, strengths, direction were paramount to making sure that people went on the right path. And around AI, like you mentioned, there's a big quest for speed at the moment, efficiency gains, and what I'm seeing is I think 80% of the challenge at the moment is not access to tools. It is our own thinking around how we use AI and taking that time to, I suppose, set some clear guidelines on how we want to use it and potentially not use it. So I call it the psychological barrier rather than a technical barrier.
I like that. And it sounds even from our own work at Write, it links in with it in the sense of always thinking and planning it before you write anything will pay off dividends. It might take more time to do those things at the start, but it's going to save you time with iterations and frustrations and mismanaged expectations and disappointment that we get out of the real rush drive for productivity without the thinking. So I like how you link that. And why do you think then quality is a harder problem than perhaps to solve at scale, Grant? Because
Mm,
we still want good quality, high quality at the end of the day in order to stay viable as businesses.
yeah, I think a couple of things come to mind. One is, I suppose, what AI does is it can accelerate both speed, but also if we're fuzzy or
Mhm.
unclear, it can also accelerate that. So it's a bit like a photocopier. If you start photocopying a bad photocopy of a bad photocopy, then I suppose in terms of scale, what happens is it gets diluted down. So perhaps a good example of this is prompting. I don't know if you've prompted, where you start off vague and
Yeah,
you're sort of putting some general ramble into it.
yeah,
Well, it's quite a different output than if you've spent that time going through a process of thinking and put the context into what you're asking so that ultimately you're a lot sharper before you start.
yeah,
And I think at scale, the challenge across the clients that I'm seeing is how to develop some of these thinking skills, like critical thinking,
mm,
or taking that time, like particularly when we're under pressure and being told to perform, taking that time to actually stop and think before you start.
yes. So thinking, thinking, thinking. That's the remedy. That's the fix to speed and clarity. Slow it down. So today's session's called Faster Isn't Better, or isn't always better in the case of AI. Better is better, but indeed that's quite subjective as well. So slow it down, those critical thinking skills. Get into your system to thinking. Slow it down, really take time to see what it is you need. What tool do you need to support that? Is AI even needed? And then from
Mm.
there, it will save time. And you hear that from coders recently, where it's delightful that now the AI is producing all of the code and the different things, but it takes more time then to debug and fix the stuff that comes out of that if you haven't actually learned how to build it and stuff in the first place. So a recent talk I went to highlighted the need, exactly what Grant and I are both saying today, to think and write first before we turn to any AI tool, as it'll increase, and our research will show this, our recall and our ability to retrieve, hence learn, more than just getting straight, fast answers from AI for a solution. So Olga Ivanova said, when AI hands you a finished answer, your working memory never gets loaded. So nothing's transferring to your long-term memory. You felt productive, but your brain did nothing. And I find this fascinating because we are one of the reasons why we need to keep our human in the loop. Give our brain something to do, give it something to think
Mm.
about, to plan. That way, your brain is working. And I think that's
Mm.
going to be one of the future challenges. If we offload too much, then we start to actually lose some of that cognitive ability. And we'll talk about that towards the end of today's session. But the classic teacher in me is often like, well, if you're making mistakes, you're learning. If you're not making mistakes, you're just getting output, you're just getting output. What are you actually learning? How can you change as well? So my tip would be human first, like Grant said, with the thinking, with the AI, even that's writing broken, fragmented work, getting it in, thinking about it, iterating, then hit your AI, but keep your human first. Okay, so that was speed and clarity. And of course, these sections will all interlink as we go through today. Let's now talk about speed and trust. Trust. Do you trust AI tools? Do you hand it over too readily? And what are the risks of releasing AI generated content in your own name or indeed in your organization's name, especially at a time in the world where I think trust is hard won and easily lost? Grant, how do you then help leaders and teams get clear on their intent before they automate or scale?
Mm. I think you hit on a couple of things there. I mean, one is trust, And I think in New Zealand, the data says that we are probably a nation that is one of the least trustful of AI.
Oh, oh.
And in terms of one of the risks, or big risk, is your own reputation risk.
Hmm.
So, an example of that was working with a client, and she had a leader that started posting on LinkedIn. Came a bit out of the blue, but it was quite clear that it was her CEO was using AI, and what was coming out was pretty generic. And that sort of eroded her respect and reputation. And I think as a business, I think you probably note this is the same, Una, is
Mm.
that the moment you start losing credibility and trust, things go downhill. I think we've all got our sniff test on around, is this AI
Hmm.
or is this actually you? And so I really like a framework called the Yay framework. It's similar to what you mentioned before, which is
Oh,
you first, oh,
oh, yay.
AI, and then you again.
Ah,
So if you
nice.
if you're going to be giving something a crack, take the first step of putting your best crack forward in terms
Mm.
of your purpose, what it is that you're wanting to do, then feed it into AI. And you can even ask AI to ask you questions
Yes, yes. That's
to,
good for the cognitive ability as well. I recommend that.
yeah. And then once you've got the output, that's when you can critique it again.
Mhm.
So that's in terms of helping
Fabulous.
clients, that sort of approach is one thing. And the other is I make sure that one thing I've developed is a professional AI policy. It's a custom GPT and it's taking people through a structured process. So things such as their own professional values, what the
Mm,
purpose is that they're wanting to use. And I think a really important one, Una, is what what you don't want to use it for.
yes.
So, what are the limits in terms of things like authenticity and the input that you want to have? So, I had a coffee this morning and I asked the gentleman who said, I use AI to do my marketing and promotion. I said, what percentage of it is you and what
Oh,
percentage of it is AI? And it was fascinating his response. He found that quite an interesting question to try and gauge. What are your thoughts on it?
oh, I love it. I love the yay. So that's nice. Any kind of little mnemonics or memory aids for people, acronyms, different things are very helpful. So I like that. And that's something we can recommend as well to people now in workshops. Yeah, keep yourself in the loop ultimately. I like the percentage thing particularly because I think in a world where we're all very time poor, I think
Hmm.
all of us, we want results fast. We want results yesterday, probably. Hence, when we see something that looks shiny and good, and AI is always trying to satisfy us, it's too easy, too tempting to accept it at first hand. So bring in the critical thinking skills to earn the trust. Let AI earn your trust the same way you would do it with a human. Does it show up for you? Does a human show up for you if they're supposed to at the right time? But how do you know? And doing it in a line with your own value system. We both have the value of curiosity, hence why we like this world. The value of learning. We want to learn. We're both lifelong learners. And that means we have to make sure AI is questioning us. We're questioning its outputs, good critical thinking skills, because that keeps that cognitive function working, functioning. Without that, we just accept too readily. So a bit of a mix. I accept everything you're saying. I think, yes, you mentioned before critical thinking skills. They are, to me, the fix, the antidote in a world of perhaps where we're bombarded with information, but where we're building trust, then stick to your AI strategy, your policy. Encourage your staff to do the same when you're working with teams. Lead by showing what you do, lead from the top by doing what you're recommending others do as well. And signposting, sharing those documents with your team, making sure they're available, making sure you have little debunk sessions with teams as well to talk about the importance of trust. Because going back to what you said at the start, I think you said once trust is lost, Grant, I don't know if we can really retrieve it reputationally. And you see that across the world, today's world, in different things as well. Once something is tarnished, It is very hard to repair that. So do it right, slow it down, think properly to begin with. Is it in line with your own values? Are you being authentic? Is it even needed, the tool? If it is, where will it best add value? And I think that's a nice way in a world where it's speedy, speedy, speedy. Okay. So yeah, lots of things to think about there in terms of speed and trust. And that brings us on, and we've touched a little bit on it already, on this speed and cognitive load. So I watched a session recently with Greg Shove, the CEO of Section, and he had said that AI has caused one of the biggest shifts in knowledge work that the world has ever seen. And this is us in it, working in the middle of it at the moment. And I think that same shift in my own thinking then has caused a lot of people to upskill very fast. That has made it harder then and has impacted our ability to deliver high quality output, goods, products, whatever it is we work with. And in some cases, then caused what we're now reading and hearing about AI burnout. So, to give you an example from our clients and who we work with at Right, we're hearing some clients talk about the good news in the sense of AI has removed those mundane tasks, the very repetitive things, the easy wins, which has been exciting. We've jumped on board. But what it's left then in terms of, and going back to percentages, as you mentioned before, people then are concentrating harder or spending more of their percentage of their workday on those harder, complex, higher order thinking tasks or skills. And some clients would say this has increased decision-making fatigue as opposed to reducing it because it's taken away their sense of breathing space that they maybe got from doing some of those repetitive tasks or the downtime that brought them. So I find that fascinating. And Grant, would you say, have you seen any or heard any of this AI related fatigue with your clients?
Yes, I certainly have. I think there's quite a spectrum that I'm seeing at the moment. I mean, the early adopters, the enthusiasts, the clients and people that have jumped into it are at a different level of maturity than those that are just getting into it at the moment. So I think that fatigue is evident in the people that I'm seeing that have really jumped in boots and all.
Yeah.
There's a really great article I read by a guy by the name of Steve Yegi around the AI vampire. And he talks about how there's the promise of 10 times productivity and being able to increase our efficiency. But he also points that does come at a cost.
Mhm.
And I think things like jumping between jobs, the ability to suddenly turn an idea into whether it be an app or to take
Mhm.
it 5 steps down the line before it would have taken weeks, is just creating a scenario where I think we need to be a bit thoughtful about how we both use it individually, but
Mhm.
also how we implement it in organizations. And that's where I think it can come down to the likes of HR
Mhm.
or even individual managers to make sure that, yes, there is the focus on efficiency and productivity and what it can actually do, which is fantastic. I mean, it is just mind blowing what it can do. But there's also needs to be a bit of a recognition and some steps on
Mhm.
how to balance that out with the human side.
Mhm.
I think we shared previously, Una, about the doctor
Oh,
that
yes.
I was at an AI event and there was the talk about productivity and efficiency and how the note taking apps were able to pretty much increase the efficiency of doctors. They no longer needed to take notes. And the doctor said, well, actually, that is some of the time that I get to process and get that downtime. And so there was a real balance, I think, between this push for getting rid of all the mundane and efficiency, which it does, and I find in my own leadership and coaching practice, saving hours a day in terms of things like recording and note taking, if used correctly.
Yes.
Just put that in there.
Yes.
But likewise, if all we're doing throughout the day is just these high cognitive tasks, then, yeah, I don't know about you, but it can get quite draining, can be a bit overwhelming. And that's why I think it's important to put things in place that
Mhm.
can actually almost offset it. I liked what he said in his in the article about the AI vampire. He compared it a bit like the slot machine,
Oh,
where you can actually, when AI acts as a genius, you know, that time that you put it in and
yeah.
what comes back is absolutely amazing. And you go, oh my gosh, that is incredible. It's like you get this endorphin hit, and then you'll
Mm,
try do it again and do it again
yes.
and do it again. And one of my sayings at the moment is I think everybody wants the candy, but they're not willing to put in the mahi and the
Mm,
work around AI, I think, is around building up some of those skills and muscles so that it's not just throwing ourselves into it, it's how do we choose the right tool? Do we need AI to be doing it or not? You know, have we mapped out some of the workflow? What are our prompting techniques? And on top of that, the softer side, which is, I suppose, where I'm noticing that balance between a lot of organizations at the moment giving access, running tool specific training programs, but very few giving the space for people to explore some of perhaps their concerns, their objections.
mm.
And so I think that's one of the challenges of adoption is that if you just roll out the tool, you do miss a trick in terms of getting people engaged, particularly people who are perhaps a little bit more skeptical than those early
Yes.
adopters.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
definitely do. And it just something that came to mind when you were speaking there was like my own head was going, well, any muscle that you don't use, you lose.
Mm,
And if we're not using those thinking muscles, the writing muscles in any shape or form, then that's going to gradually deteriorate over time, which is what's happening. And
mm,
our ability then to even process simple decisions, I do worry for the future if we don't keep using those muscles and abilities now and keep it present in our everyday work. And just one other story. And if you have any final questions, just make sure you pop them in the chat and we'll jump to them shortly. One final thought, just going on from what you were saying there, Grant. So the speed and the cognitive load and that drive to do things faster can cause poor decision making sometimes if we don't think to begin with. And I imagine all businesses want sustainable AI use that improves efficiency without compromising staff well-being or quality of output. And it brings me in mind, I had a story or a conversation with a friend yesterday who happens to be a software programmer. And it was fascinating because he had been experiencing this mental fog. He was unsure about his thinking to the point where he went to a doctor to actually see what was happening. Was there something behind the scenes? And it turned out the context, the frequent context switching was the root cause. And I find this like, wow.
yeah.
So he was doing, so when AI was taking a few minutes to do a task, he might have been jumping, constantly jumping between different contexts and activities. So work tasks, social media, perhaps checking his phone or whatever that was. So all of that had fragmented his attention and led to this mental fog. So his takeaway was brilliant, but so simple when we think about it. It was now he's learning to focus fully on one task at a time. So if AI is doing something, you focus fully on that. Giving a task your complete attention then will reduce that cognitive strain and improve clarity of thinking. And I'm hoping this will apply to everything we've talked about today. Interestingly, AI can unintentionally increase distraction. It can save time, but then it's encouraging us to squeeze more tasks into the same period of time. So we'll switch, we'll go, oh, I'm going to jump. And that potentially overall can affect our memory and recall, which he was experiencing. So I think as well that links to psychology and close those loops. Finish what you start at that time when multiple tasks are left open. Your brain's trying to track them all. So that's that higher cognitive load. Doing more in less time isn't productive. And that brings us back to faster isn't better, definitely not for your cognitive load. Better is better. What that looks like will be very subjective to you and your business, of course, as well. But good quality procedures that are built and linked to AI strategies and policies are super, super valuable. So one task at a time. Don't switch unnecessarily between apps or activities. Push yourself to stick with it for 2 minutes. Can you do that? So finish tasks before starting new ones and reduce open tabs, both literally and mentally. So one final question then. Let's jump to the chat just quickly. I can see some questions coming in as well. And let's see who we have. Oh, so here's one from Truus Ormsby Martin. Grant, once an AI tool has gained your trust, how do you recommend we keep our practice of prompting it to reflect and self-check its own output?
Mm. So just in terms of the question, could you just repeat the question, Una?
Yeah. So once you've allowed the AI to gain your trust, the tool,
Hmm.
how do you recommend we keep our practice of prompting it to reflect and self-check its own output?
Yeah. I think what I'm taking from that question is how to maybe not jump down the rabbit hole of once it's taken, yeah, we've got trust.
Yes.
And so we're going down a rabbit hole without potentially checking it again.
Hmm.
And there is actually some interesting research about that. There's a good book called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. And there was an
Hmm.
academic piece of research that also talked about when they incorporated AI, they called it the third system. On top of that, it would send people down rabbit holes. I suppose one thing that I find works well for me is almost to make sure that I pull myself out, like past a certain point, stepping away from it, and even running it by a different source. So
Mm.
whether it be doing some research independently, like just making sure it hasn't hallucinated,
Hmm.
or something that I've been doing at the moment is giving ChatGPT and Claude a run for the money side by side. So it's just really interesting when you can, I suppose, use different tools, but also have a strategy to make sure that it, just the check in at different points. I think it's those critical thinking skills that you talked about.
Yeah, I
Um,
like that, Grant. And we're almost at time, but I think it's nice because you've actually answered two in one there. You've answered Andy's question in the other chat as well. He was asking, can you use one AI model to check the work of another? And you've said you do that with Claude and Gemini. I know lots of people will do that. Enter the output from the first along with your prompt and ask the second one, evaluate both. Both almost think of your AI like I've heard it before, different children. Do you love all your children equally? Do you get different opinions? What are they doing? They'll take their own, they'll have ethics system behind them, depending on who those tools are built by. Again, comes back to authentic use. And to tie into Truus's question there as well, I think build in your workflow with your prompt, Truus, to make sure that it has a part of the process where it has to check, provide sources, it has to show its thinking. It's almost like
yeah,
maths. If you see the working out at school, you used to get points if you went wrong somewhere lower up or higher up in your calculation, then you could see that part that you struggled with. The same with AI, you want to see, and we can see when it churns out an answer, it's thinking behind the scenes, but build that into a prompt chain, build it into perhaps a workflow where you're asking it to demonstrate it's checked something as well. Okay, so wow, lots of thoughts in the chat there. And good question there, Anne. Unfortunately, we haven't got time to get to. There are different ways. Yeah, manager training for AI looks different to training staff on the technology as well. And all of that will come down to how well it's been adopted from above in your organizations and how well that's been filtered out and rolled out openly, transparently, and teams are supported in that to come open door, ask questions, get the support they need, get the right training at the right time. Where it adds value is to me the litmus, and the key is really show staff how it adds value as well. So it may look different at different tiers of management. Okay, we could talk about this topic all day. I know Grant could and I could, and we tend to when we catch up talk about it for much longer. But thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully you've got a lot out of it, or at least identified some aspects of is AI the right thing at the right time, is faster, better, and how can you ensure high quality, better output just by thinking about some of these as well. So it's always good to take time to discuss, and thank you for sharing your precious time with us as well, especially Grant for sharing the most precious commodity of them all, which is time and wisdom, which is hard earned in today's world. It has been lovely having you with us today. Enjoy the rest of your day and speak soon. Thanks, Grant.
thank you.